Brad, I hope you're having a great Tuesday. Welcome into the game in Tuscaloosa.
Thank you, Ryan. This is a rough week for us. I don't think it's just us here, ESPN covering nationally, but even with the schools locally, there's not much to really get into this week. So let's make some stuff up.
Well, no, listen, we're not even covering the Mercer game. We'll do our score prediction at some point this afternoon, but it's not going to be a lot of Mercer Bears. It's going to be a lot about those Auburn Tigers. But let me go back here just for a couple of minutes, because you were down in Auburn watching the Georgia and Auburn game. What was your big takeaway as you observed that game down in Jordan-Hare Stadium?
Well, I guess the takeaway was that when Auburn plays like that, they can beat anybody in the country. And the question is, can they do that again? Because not only were they just, emotionally ready to play, but they physically executed as well as they possibly could have. I mean, they played pretty much a mistake-free game. And that's I guess if you're an Alabama fan, that's what you kind of take some comfort in, is that they probably wouldn't be able to do that 2 big games in a row, go out and have so few mistakes. But the way they're playing right now, they're as good as anybody in the country. And I think generally when you look around, we'll have the rankings come out tonight, and I think if you look at the top 7, outside of maybe Wisconsin, I think I would probably put them at a lower level. But the other 6 teams in the top 7, I think, are all capable of winning the playoff if they get into it, obviously, and then draw the right matchups. I think for some of these teams, it's all about matchups, and Auburn is not only are they good enough to beat Alabama and beat Georgia again and win the SEC, but if they get the right draw, I think they could go all the way. But I think you could say the same thing for several teams.
Well, you look at Georgia's, no doubt their resume took a big hit with Notre Dame going down at Miami, the way they played, the way Georgia played there in Lee County. Is that exposing both of those teams, or maybe they just had a bad Saturday afternoon?
Yeah, I think when you look at Notre Dame and Georgia, it was a very similar plot line there, which is that we had been talking for at least a month about both of those teams. What's going to happen when someone finally slows down their running game and they have to throw to win? Will they be able to do it? And I think the answer was a pretty emphatic no for both of those teams on Saturday. They were not able to do what they were accustomed to doing, running the ball. Everything fell on the quarterback's shoulders, or really more specifically on the quarterback's arm, and they're just not that kind of team. And I think in some ways that made the Alabama game maybe a little bit more impressive, which is that for most of the game, Alabama was not able to run the ball, at least not the way that we're used to seeing them. And yet Jalen Hurts, the quarterback who I think a lot of people around the country would tell you is not a quarterback who could throw if the other team knew that he had to throw, he did exactly that. And so, look, they will face better defenses than Mississippi State down the stretch, so I think they are obviously going to have to run the ball better. But it was, I guess, comforting to Alabama people to see Hurts be able to make big throws in the clutch, which is something that the quarterbacks of Notre Dame and Georgia were not able to do, and that's why their games got away from them.
Brad, I heard you talking about it multiple times last week. You talked about it here on this program, but also on this station on ESPN as we do the game day all day, and you were down in Lee County, and I enjoyed your conversation with Coach Pat Dye. You guys had a lot of fun there with that conversation, but you talked about Alabama's linebackers. And would this be the moment that they came up, the injuries finally caught up with them? What were your thoughts after watching the game? Obviously, it was a confirmation of what you had said all week last week.
Yeah, I think what's concerning is that's now 2 weeks in a row, if you go back to the LSU game, that the opponent has been able to run the ball effectively. I'm not going to go as far as to say, dominantly, because that wasn't the case, but effectively in that, more often than not, they're getting more than 3 yards when they're running, and they were able to consistently get themselves into, third and manageable. Most of the time we see Alabama play, the opponent's usually in third and long. And even when they did get Mississippi State in third and long, they, for the first 3 quarters, they were converting most of those. So That was surprising. But I think when you look specifically at being able to stop the run, against Mississippi State, Alabama allowed 16 runs of 5 yards or more. Against LSU the week before, they allowed 16 runs of 5 yards or more. Those two performances, those are the two highest single-game totals by an Alabama opponent in that category over the last 3 seasons. And they've come in the last 2 games. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it has to do with the injuries at linebacker. And then to some extent, it does look like the defensive line is not getting the same push that we're accustomed to seeing them get. And maybe it's because the quality of competition is, has increased, has improved. Maybe, as they play better teams, we're seeing that, we may be seeing something that we all knew coming into the season, which is this defensive front was not going to be as good as the last 2 years. I mean, those guys all left, went to the NFL, and while these are good players who are taking their place, they're inexperienced, and you can't expect them all to be first and second round NFL picks. And so there is a little bit of a drop off there. So I don't know. I don't know if it's all the linebackers or maybe it's just that the defensive linemen. Maybe they're not as good as Jonathan Allen and Dalvin Tomlinson and all that. But we'll see. I mean, they have a chance to regroup. But I guess my takeaway from what I'm saying about the running game, what LSU did, what Mississippi State did, Auburn can do the same thing with its running game. The issue is that Auburn is much more of a threat than those other two to hit you deep. If they're having success running the ball and you're having to move an extra guy up into the box to help out with that run defense, Auburn can hit some big plays on you down the field, which is something you're not as worried about with Mississippi State and LSU. And so I think the bottom line is that Alabama's offense is going to have to step up, and they're going to have to pick up the slack. I don't think that the Iron Bowl is going to be a game where Alabama can just kind of feel things out early offensively, try to find some stuff that works, and then plan on wearing down the opponent in the second half. I think they're going to have to strike early and often, which is not going to be easy to do against a good defensive team.
I know they scored 31 points, but obviously they came in with a little different mindset. When I look at this Auburn game, if Alabama is going to win the game, they're going to have to come in, as you said right there, depend on the offense a little bit, but be more aggressive in some of the play calling. Don't act like that you've got a 10 out of 10, A+, 4.33 defense that's sitting over there just chomping at the bit to come out on the field.
You're right. You're right. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that you can't count on the defense to hold the score down. And that's not saying that they won't. But I don't think you can come in with the expectation that there's no way Auburn's going to score 30 points because they very well could. And so I think it does require a little bit different mentality. And maybe that means you got to open it up and be a little bit more aggressive early. Now, I know, you hate with an offense like Alabama's to throw an incomplete pass on first down, and then you're kind of stuck behind the chains. But I think you're going to have to take some of those chances. And then, even late in the game, we finally saw a play. Actually, it happened twice on that last drive. The quick passes, kind of slant routes. At least that's what one of them was for sure. Is a play that's kind of designed to combat the blitz because there's just been so many times where it just seems like Alabama's mindset is, okay, you know what, if we get blitzed, we just take the sack, punt it back, and it's no big deal because we'll play defense, get the ball back, as opposed to trying to force something with a quarterback under pressure and then maybe turn the ball over. I think that's the type of thing that they're going to have to expect to see from Auburn because opponents have had a lot of success with that, which is just send extra guys, get pressure on Hurts. He's going to throw the ball away most of the time if he does get pressure, or either that or he's going to go down. And so it was good to see them call some plays there at the end. So okay, we're going to play a little bit of a chess game here. If you're going to do that, then here's what we're going to do to combat it. And there's going to have to be more of that early. It's not going to have to be wait until your back's up against the wall before you finally have an answer for that thing that the defense has been doing against you all night that's having success.
Brad, if you were trying to project what this 4 will look like tonight, what would you say?
I would say I think the top four are pretty obvious. I just don't know the order. I'm going with Alabama, Miami, Oklahoma, Clemson. Although I could easily see it being Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Miami. The order I think is up for debate, and some people might even argue for someone other than Alabama at number one. I think the next three, in some order, will be Auburn, Wisconsin, Georgia, and those are the 7 teams that I think at this point don't need any help. Those 7 teams, I believe, any of them went out, they're in the playoff. It's the teams after 7 that need the help, but it'll be fascinating to see because there still are scenarios. We can get into this next week. There are scenarios where you would have a one-loss team from the SEC or the ACC that is not the conference champion that would still have a chance to get in. I don't think it's a stretch at this point to say that not only could we have a 2-loss team for the first time in this playoff era, but we could also have 2 teams from one conference for the first time.
All right, Brad, there's no way that we can wait until next Tuesday. I mean, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, but listen, everywhere I go here in Tuscaloosa, man, I stop and get gas. I go to the local place for lunch, buy groceries. Can Alabama, do you see a possible scenario if they lose to Auburn, are they completely out of this thing?
I don't think so. I think if they lose the way Georgia did, then they're out of it. You're not going to end the season on that result and be able to get into the playoff. But if it's a close loss, I can see a scenario where here's what it starts with. It starts with Wisconsin not being the Big Ten champ. So if you have a 2-loss team, let's just assume it's Ohio State, a 2-loss team winning the Big Ten, you combine that with the Pac-12 already being guaranteed to have a team with 2 losses as its conference champion, and then you're no more Notre Dame. You don't have to worry about them. So at that point, you're pretty much down to without Wisconsin being the Big Ten champ, you're pretty much down to 3 conferences for the 4 spots, and it's just a question of are there 4 viable playoff teams out of those 3 conferences? There's only one in the Big 12. That's Oklahoma. So it just comes down to ACC versus SEC. So in this particular case, if Wisconsin's not the Big Ten champ, Alabama loses the Iron Bowl, or let's even say Alabama wins the Iron Bowl and then loses to Georgia. If it's a close loss, I think that Alabama would get the nod over Miami or Clemson coming up short in the ACC championship game.
Okay. Let me ask you with Wisconsin, do you think they run the table and you think they win?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think I'm not sure Wisconsin can score on Ohio State. I sat there and watched Iowa put up 50 whatever on Ohio State, and I still don't know how they did it. But Wisconsin's quarterback is probably the weakness of their team, and they lean on that running game, and they probably this year are leaning even more on their defense. But I don't think they'll be able to run on Ohio State. I don't think their quarterback will be able to make many plays during the game, and I don't think there's any defense in the Big Ten that's good enough to hold Ohio State under 20. And I think that's what it would take for Wisconsin to win that game. So I think, no, would I be shocked if Michigan beats Ohio State? No. But I would be shocked if Wisconsin did.
If I was making or asking you for an early pick, not making you, but just asking you for an early pick, who would you favor right now in Alabama and Auburn in the Iron Bowl?
Personally, I would pick Auburn to win right now. I wouldn't favor them, like in terms of Vegas.
Sure.
I think it would be stupid to make anyone a favorite over Alabama at this point, especially while they're still undefeated, given their track record and all that. The way that both teams are playing right now, the way that Alabama's offense has kind of over the last 3 games just kind of been slow out of the gate and just kind of they don't seem to be clicking. You know what I mean? Like they'll have a touchdown and then they'll go 3 and out the next 2 drives. And it's just they just don't seem to be in a good place offensively. It's not that they're bad by any stretch, but I don't have great confidence that they're going to go in and score a lot of points on Auburn. And looking at the other side, I think Auburn, because of what they do offensively, with all the eye candy and the motion and jet sweeps, all that stuff. That's very stressful when you've got some linebackers out there who are either inexperienced or maybe later in the game you've got your more experienced guys out there who are just tired or inexperienced guys having to deal with all that motion and stuff. That's just asking for mistakes, and I worry about Alabama being able to avoid giving up the big plays against Auburn, given the injury situation on defense. And so the combination of the two, along with, by the way, the game being at Auburn, which is a huge deal, I would definitely pick Auburn right now. And I can't imagine that my opinion would change based on what happens for either team this weekend. So now, am I not giving Alabama a chance? Of course, that's not the case. But I do think that at this moment of the season, Auburn's best game is better than Alabama's best game. And I think Alabama is going to have to force Auburn into some mistakes, like turnovers, or Alabama's going to have to make some big plays on special teams. Because I think if both teams play pretty much mistake-free, Auburn's probably going to win.
Brad, final question. We are talking about this rivalry and certainly what it means to both sides of the fan base. How would you describe the Alabama and Auburn rivalry from someone, you went to school obviously at Alabama. You've been a part of it from a media perspective and being a student here at the University of Alabama. How would you describe this game to an outsider?
Well, I have to do that sometimes at ESPN, and the word that always comes up is hate, and I don't think that it's being oversold. Auburn, Georgia is a big rivalry too, and we were down there last week, as you mentioned, and it's not the same between the fans. There's just a very grave dislike, if you don't want to call it hatred, between the two programs. And I'm not saying it necessarily carries on to the field. I think the players have more respect for each other than the fans do. But it's really the 365 nature of it. I think that sets it apart from other rivalries. It's the way that that you'll get on your show, I'm sure. And anytime I host as a fill-in on Feinbaum, it doesn't matter what month it is. You're always getting the back and forth with the Alabama and Auburn fans, and that's really what separates it. And you know what? Until recent years, I think that for the most part, Alabama and Auburn didn't have the most meaningful rivalry in terms of the significance of the games. Most of the time, the game was only significant to one team. Very rarely was it both. Since about 1990 or so. But in the last, going back to 2010, actually not even 2010, because that game really was all about the rivalry for Alabama, but the West had already been clinched. But we're starting to see more of these where the game is really meaningful to both teams. So, 2013, obviously. So this will be the second time in 5 years that this game is for the SEC West. And that adds another layer to it that it didn't need that layer in the past to be as intense of a rivalry, or maybe the most intense rivalry in college football. But when you throw that on top of it, I think the tensions get higher. The emotions are already high, but I think the tension is there to go with it, and it's going to be quite a scene and quite a build-up next week.